What's going on, people? This is Kish, Yardi Nation Gaming. Remember to share, like, subscribe to the panel, subscribe for more content. Help me to grow and get out there because my mission and goal is to shift the culture, free black men, get black men to evolve and get to the next stage of their masculinity, which is what I call the sovereign identity or the sovereign masculinity. And first, let me talk about the direction of my channel. At first, this was supposed to be a gaming channel, and then I realized I have more to offer the world than gaming. I have a lot of life experiences. A lot of times, I don't talk about it on the internet because there's a lot of things I just don't want to reveal. Right. A lot of my background, how I grew up, some of the crap I've been through. You know, um, This is why when I heard Tommy Sotomayor speak or brothers like the Angry Man talk, I could resonate with a lot of it because I experienced a lot of it. Even though I'm a Caribbean nigga, a lot of Caribbean background and a lot of Black American background, they're parallel or they have certain similar intersecting uh how you say intersecting um intersecting behaviors, right? Certain behaviors intersect, like in Caribbean Black culture and Black American culture. We mirror each other. Like a lot of times, like when they talk about Caribbean Blacks cosplaying Black Americans, that's not true. Because like when you look at New York City and you study the New York City, how New York Black people got our identity, it was a fusion from Black Americans from the South during the 1930s and Caribbean Blacks. A lot of people don't know that a lot of Caribbean Black people, they came with those big fancy suits that you saw Malcolm X wearing, right? Then with the Harlem Renaissance, it was a fusion of both, and it gave New York's unique identity. So Black Caribbean niggas, we're not cosplaying anybody, we're just expressing bits and pieces from New York's identity that our forebears, when they migrated here, added to. So that's the important part now being talked about when it comes to New York history, right? Um, but I want to shift the Black culture. When I say Black culture, I'm talking about the Black culture of the diaspora, especially here in America, right? Because Caribbean Blacks, we are part of the foundation of America. We are. And we've added to it, and along with Black Americans, right? We like, like in my opinion, I think Black American men and especially Jamaican men, we're the dominant alpha groups of the culture when it comes to the Black culture in general, right? You go to UK, there's parts of Caribbean culture and Black American culture in their identity. You go to even Japan, you have dancehall reggae over there, and you have hip hop over there. So we're the dominant influence on the planet when it comes to Black culture as a whole, right? Um, so that's my goal. My goal is to shift the culture and to get Black men to evolve as well as myself. That's the legacy I want to leave on this planet. When I die and my children, give me a moment, my children see the work that I've done, not only they can benefit, but they can say, "Yo, Dad, he he shifted something. He shifted the culture in a positive way. He helped Black men to evolve. He stood before he stood for what's righteous and stood against what was wrong." Um, so that's my goal. That's my mission. As far as here on YouTube is concerned. Um, so subscribe, share, like, and help me push that message, right? And hold me accountable to my own message. You know what I'm saying? The moment you see me stray from that or going to the negative direction, you let me know. Give me a moment. There's something I want to add to this. That's very important. Well, that's not it. Some of y'all don't watch the full video, and y'all need to watch the full video. because there's tons of gems and tons of game that I drop, and you need to take the time to watch the video. Watch the video while you at your work on your break time. Watch the video, while you clean it up out of the household. Women watch the video too. But like you can learn a lot from some of the information I teach, and you can have your sons watch what I teach, what I put, right? I'm not the end all be all to it. I am not the. Hold on, give me 1 second. To masculinity, but you can use what I taught to You can use what I taught to influence. Give me 1 second. So yeah, so a lot of the stuff I drop is to teach myself, but to also teach the next generation of men. Because I'm 33 years old, and pretty soon I'm going to be 50 and have my own children, a lineage. So make the time to watch the video, make the time to watch the hour, take a break, come back to it, review it, comment in the comment section. All right. So let's begin. I was on a panel. Shout out to Tommy Sotomayor for hosting the panel. And a topic was being brought up about whether you want to pick Batman or Spider-Man. I picked Batman at first. Later on, I said, which Spider-Man are you talking about? I said Miles Morales because I understood what Miles Morales, the Spider-Man, represented. And I'm gonna break that down here in this recording. And people made jokes about it. Miles Morales, he's a nigga. Miles Morales, he was raised by a Mexican mother, so now he knows how to rob and steal. And what I realized, a lot of black men who represent the conservatives on the right, they like to repeat a lot of white people talking points. So I've heard white people in the gaming space that I'm part of and the entertainment space that I'm part of say some of the same shit, missing what the point behind the movie was. Now, in this panel, we were talking about fatherhood and all that other stuff. That movie, Miles Morales, represented everything that this panel that I was on was speaking about when it comes to manhood and the benefits to having a father, but they mocked Miles Morales. And I'm going to show you how. All right, so I'm going to play the video. Shout out to Tommy. Again.
Right. Okay.
Man, I'm sorry. Wait, hold on. Which Spider-Man are you talking about?
Batman or Spider-Man? Who you got?
Spider-Man all day.
Batman. See, I'll pick Batman at first.
Spider-Man.
They pick Spider-Man.
Batman.
Oh my goodness. What is wrong with you people, man?
What the fuck?
You got a Batman. What you mean, you people?
Wait. Hold on. Which Spider-Man you talking about? Miles Morales or Peter Parker?
I'm Peter Parker. I don't need that nigga Spider-Man.
See what I'm saying? That whole movie had a deeper message behind it being the nigga Spider-Man. The nigga Spider-Man. I'm sorry. The nigga Spider-Man. I'm sorry.
You said what?
Now I played along with it because I don't want to disrupt the flow of the show and then make an argument. So I just went with the flow, right? I like it wasn't that type of show. It wasn't the type of it wasn't the core message of the show. So I didn't want to disrupt it. But I'm gonna make a video about it.
What Spider-Man you don't need?
Spider-Man.
The nigga Spider-Man.
What's funny is that Brian's father, as according to himself, was a cop. So I don't understand how he didn't like the nigga Spider-Man, as they say.
Why is Spider-Man on the other? What's that?
It's a nigga Mexican Spider-Man.
See, a nigga Mexican, and Miles Morales' mother is Puerto Rican. But maybe I could give Brian the benefit of the doubt because he doesn't know the culture of New York.
Right. Okay. I don't trust the black Spider-Man.
I trust him.
The only Spider-Man we acknowledge is Parker.
See?
Wait a minute. So you said a black Spider-Man gonna steal your shit?
That's the same shit that a lot of the white boys of the gaming space that I'm also a part of that I argue back and forth. That's some of the same shit they say. So I'm sorry, Brian, if you ever see this video, like you make some of the same rhetoric that they say about the nigga Spider-Man as y'all claim. You don't trust the black Spider-Man. How you not trust the black Spider-Man when his father was a cop, a black cop?
Should have been Venom anyway. The black man should have been Venom.
Miles Morales is gonna turn out to be a car thief.
See,
because he's black and he's Mexican.
See,
he's gonna steal out of Brooklyn.
He got a black daddy that's a cop. Come on, man.
But he got a Mexican mama. He gonna steal.
And I said that because Brian's father is a cop, and even if he had a Mexican mother, what does it matter? When you talk about the idea of patriarchy, the mother is part of that black man's household and dynasty and legacy. That child they have is also part of that his dynasty and legacy. So really and truly, that Puerto Rican or Mexican mother is really bows down to a black father. She's now black, and so is the children that they produce. They're part of his DNA dynasty, his dynasty, his lineage. That's how patriarchy works. So I see a lot of lingering effects of black cultures, matrilineal, still on this panel. So that means that black people, as black men, we still have a lot to go when it comes to going into evolution of first being from the matrilineal standpoint to a patriarchal standpoint, and then to a sovereign patriarchal standpoint, which is to have your identity fused with the objective identity of patriarchy. And I'm going to showcase that to y'all today.
See all of the lowriders out of Brooklyn.
He gonna steal a lowrider and stab somebody.
See?
Because that's what meant.
A lot of the conservatives say that. A lot of people in the gaming space and industry say that about Miles. I argue with them all day. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing there, and I'm going to go into the presentation of what I want to present today. So this is what I mean about the good man, performative masculinity versus sovereign masculinity, right? We're not going to go deep into this because I don't want it to take over the time. Society's definition, the performative masculinity. I'm just setting this foundation for what I go into with Miles Morales, right? Society's definition, the performative masculinity. Society tells you what a good man is based on how and what. So this is what today's society says, right? Or what benefits women, not men. This good man image is performative. It's a man's acting to please the system, not to serve his own vision. In modern culture, good often means obedient, compliant, and easily controlled. A man who gives without demanding balance, who loves without being respected, and who builds without receiving loyalty in return. This performative version is often praised because it feeds into a system where the woman holds emotional or moral authority over the man. I want to add this piece of game that just came into my brain. I was watching a panel with Fatty, the Untouchables. Shout out to Fatty and the Untouchables. And the topic of the show was, should men chase women. One of the women said that no, a man should chase them. Well, that's not in the biological nature of men. What's supposed to happen is that how men have always operated historically, and I did a video about that too, is that men, we compete, we build ourselves up, and then the woman chooses to follow. So I present myself as the complete product. The woman chooses to follow. Now she's supposed to follow with her loyalty, not have me continuously chase for her validation. So that's game right there, right? So once a woman chooses to go on the date with me, she chooses to submit to my authority and she's supposed to be loyal to me, right? That's how that historically has always gone, from hunter-gatherers to Roman Empire to the Victorian age, right? The man's definition, the sovereign masculinity, sovereign identity, masculine identity is how a man defines himself. It's a man saying, I decide what makes me a good man, not society, not women, not trends. Sovereign masculinity means you build your own kingdom, your own rules, your own moral structure, you protect your own peace, your own boundaries, your own code. You perform for the world, not the world that tries to control you, right? Now, there's benefit for the performative masculinity, right? Exists for social order and acceptance. Can be useful because every civilization needs men to perform, to build, defend, and lead, right? So the performative masculinity, when you take it out how women defined it today, and you throw it back into how historically it has always been defined by men, when you go to the Victorian age, the performative masculinity was for men to what? Be the protector, be the custodian of society, the moral foundation and authority of society. When you take it back to the Roman era, same thing. When you take it back to the hunter-gatherer age, the performative masculinity was protect, hunt, get the resources, be the most dominant man that able to fight and hunt and kill a buffalo, right? Sovereign masculinity is internal. Now, so let me read this, right? Can be useful because every civilization needs men to perform, to build, defend, and lead. But it becomes destructive when performance replaces sovereignty. Sovereign masculinity is eternal and self-defined. It sets the standards, then perform them on your terms. You perform as a reward for alignment, not as proof as work. That means that now, when you're performing for a social hierarchy, like, say, for example, a construction company, and you know that the value as a worker you're bringing is to get up there early every morning, contribute contribute to how the structure of how everything goes, make sure the construction site is clean and safe. You know what goes on to the details of a construction worker. But if that company's direction doesn't align with your sovereign identity, which is your moral compass, your codes, and how you define yourself, you can make a choice. You can quit that job and find another construction company to work for, right? The Passport Bros did that, right? When they recognized that Black culture was no longer lining up with their traditional principles, they said, fuck Black culture and went somewhere else, right? So the Passport Bros stopped being what Black culture expects them to be, which is destructive and anti-traditional, and they tapped into their sovereign identity and brought their traditional masculinity somewhere else, or to get something from better women from somewhere else, because part of the performative masculinity of Black culture was you had to be with a Black woman regardless if she was traditional or not, right? Why the Victorian model worked and where it went wrong? Victorian model still had its social expectations for both genders, and man goodness wasn't judged purely by how much he pleased women. It was about duty, protection, order, instruction. Women were expected to live up to complementary standards, modesty, discipline, and loyalty. Where it went wrong is it made men bear all moral responsibility for the relationship while giving women moral innocence, right? So in today's society, the good man is defined entirely by his ability to absorb disrespect and keep giving. So, a man must evolve. I should change this to evolve and return to his sovereign rule. As a man, you have to decide your standard of respect, decide how loyalty looks in your kingdom, Decide what level of obedience or cooperation earns your protection. Decide what type of woman fits your world or what type of job you can fit in as a man. Not the other way around, right? Your sovereign masculinity says, before I perform for society, I perform for me. Before I provide for her, I protect my peace. Before I give to the world, I honor my own order. Hey, I'm giving y'all some good fucking game. This is a lot better, in my opinion, and deeper than the argument than the Johnson and getting box argument that we have in these red pill spaces and manosphere spaces. Even though I respect the manosphere and I respect the red pill, in my opinion, there's a lot of content that's focused around, sex. So maybe that's for another video, right? Sovereign masculinity is the foundation. Performative masculinity is the expression. Society benefits only when a man's sovereignty is intact, because that's when his work, protection, and leadership come from strength, not guilt or manipulation. If you remove a man's sovereignty, you destroy his reason to perform. If you protect his sovereignty, he will perform naturally for his legacy, lineage, and his women, if she's loyal to his order. All right, so this is important right here, because this is what Miles Morales had to learn how to do, right? A man doesn't build himself in isolation. He builds himself through interaction, by watching, testing, failing, and learning from his environment. Every man takes bits and pieces from the external world and uses them to construct who he is on the inside. The world gives you examples, some to follow, others to reject. That's why I don't tell men to shut the world out. I tell men to study it. The external world is full of tools, lessons, and warnings. It'll show you who you want to be and who you never want to become. You can adapt what works and discard what doesn't. Shout out to Bruce Lee. The key is to build from observation, not from imitation. You don't follow the world. You use the world to reinforce your own foundation. I need to write a book. The purpose of the external world, the external reference, your external world, the people you know, the men you learn from, the environments you survive, all survive on purpose to help you sharpen your internal standard. That's what it means to be sovereign. Sovereignty doesn't mean isolation. It means you control what influences you. You decide what comes in and what gets rejected. A man can take advice, but no one can tell him who to be. A man can listen to other voices, but his voice must always be the final authority in his life. Why this matters? If you only rely on what society tells you, you become a performer. If you completely reject the world, you become blind. But if you use the world as a tool to study patterns, people, and behavior, you become wise. You start to see through the manipulation, the trends, the emotional traps. You start to understand what actually builds men and what breaks them down. That's the power of sovereign masculinity. You use the external world to refine your internal rule. You study the world without letting it rule over you. My saying by me, a man doesn't belong to the world. He learns from it, then he builds his own. All right, so that's the fountain. So objective masculinity is important. Before any civilization, before titles, before religions, before the word masculine even existed, there was the male principle. It was nature's design: structure, protection, order, dominance. When you strip away the modern definition, the emotional narratives, and the political filters, what remains is how men have always functioned since the beginning of time. In the wild, the male purpose is clear: to build, protect, and lead. He establishes territory, he guards his offspring, he enforces order among his own kind. That isn't cultural, that is biological. Even among animals, male provides stability, his presence deters threats, his strength defines security. The pattern is universal, from lions to wolves to early man. So before we get philosophical, masculinity starts with responsibility over chaos. Wherever man goes, the question becomes, can he bring order to this space, the core of masculine nature? All right, so that's the foundation I want to lay for it. Now, let's go into Miles Morales himself. the movie. All right. Basic synopsis. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man Across Spider-Verse follow Miles Morales, a Brooklyn teenager who becomes a new Spider-Man after being bitten by a radioactive spider. He discovers that multiple versions of Spider-Man exist across different universes, the Spider-Verse, and that he must learn what it truly means to wear the mask, to be responsible, to be responsible, courageous, and self-sacrificing, while balances his personal life and sovereign identity and destiny. So right now he's balancing how he's supposed to perform externally to the standards of how Spider-Man is supposed to be versus having his own sovereign identity. The story centers on Miles learning to step out of Peter Parker's shadow and define his own path as Spider-Man. The multiverse concept allows different Spider-Men, Spider-Woman, including Gwen Stacy, Spider-Man Nori, Spider-Ham, etc., to interact, emphasizing individuality, destiny, and unity through struggle. Deeper premise. Beyond the woke surface, which is what I try to argue with a lot of people in the gaming space and entertainment in the entertainment space about this brother. While some interpret Miles Morales as a diversity update, the core of the film is not about race politics. It's about legacy, identity, and coming of age. Someone from a different background carries the same heroic weight as his predecessors. So that means he's not replacing Peter Parker. He's carrying the mantle, right? Miles' story parallels the universal theme of the hero's journey, being chosen unexpectedly, facing doubt, losing a mentor, and learning to rise without external validation. So it's not like Miles is just now getting his powers all at once. He's going through the same journey that every character goes through, and he's not replacing Spider-Man. He's carrying the mantle while still honoring Peter Parker. Right? It's not written as the Black Spider-Man per se. He's a Brooklyn kid, intelligent, artistic, and struggling between two worlds. The expectation of his working class family and the elite environment of his new school. His race and culture shape his environment, but they aren't the central message of the story, which everybody fucking misses, for as intelligent as you are. Nationality, ethnicity of his parents. Father, Jefferson Davis, African American. He's a Black NYPD officer with a strong moral code and a complicated relationship with vigilantes like Spider-Man. Mother, which was funny because his son was Spider-Man, right? Mother, Rio Morales, Puerto Rican Latina. She's a nurse, bilingual, English and Spanish. Nurturing but firm, representing Miles' cultural connection to both Black American and Latino heritage. Miles, therefore, is Afro-Latino, a mix of African-American and Puerto Rican descent. The film subtly weaves both cultures into his character. The film subtly weaves both cultures into his character through music, slang, home life, and family values. Now, East New York, Brooklyn is Puerto Rican, Jamaican, Black American, Trinidadian, Haitian. It's a whole mix, right? They give New York, Brooklyn, its unique identity. The movie isn't just about diversity. It's about carrying the mantle of greatness while staying true to who you are. It's a story about responsibility, mentorship, identity, and legacy, using a multicultural Brooklyn backdrop to refresh the Spider-Man myth without erasing its original message. Anyone can wear the mask, but not everyone can live up to what it stands for. Performative masculinity. At the start of the film, Miles represents performative masculinity. He's trying to fit in with his classmates, with his father's expectation, but what society tells him a good young man should be. He mimics rather than leads. He wears the mask literally and symbolically, but doesn't yet understand its weight. The phase reflects the stage where a man's identity is defined by outside validation, family, peers, and social ideals, rather than internal conviction. Example, Miles tries to be the perfect student to please his parents. He imitates Peter Parker's Spider-Man instead of trusting his instincts. His early hero attempts are awkward, hesitant, and uncertain because he's acting from approval, not authority, which a lot of men, Black men, have to evolve into this. Not from a woke perspective, not from a left perspective or conservative right perspective, from a balanced, straight, black male perspective. As the story develops, Miles transitions into sovereign masculinity, meaning he belongs to operate from inner authority, self-trust, and conviction rather than imitation. He learns that being Spider-Man isn't about copying someone else's greatness. It's about owning your responsibility and defining it through your own essence. This is made explicit in the scene where he finally paints his own black and red spider suit, a symbolic act of spiritual sovereignty. He's saying, I am not the next Peter Parker. I am Miles Morales. I almost cried repeating my own shit. I ain't gonna lie to you. I almost cried right there. Because that reminds me of when Braveheart, right before he died, he screamed out, freedom, which is the highest expression of masculinity. It's the wolf in the wild, being sovereign and howling to the moon, free to define his own destiny. I'm not the next Peter Parker. I am Miles Morales. From that point, he stops performing and starts leading, saving people, trusting his instincts, and even teaching others. Jefferson Davis, his father, represents mature masculine structure, duty, order, and integrity, but also a kind of rigidity. He loves Miles, but he doesn't see him fully. That tension forces Miles to define himself without needing his father's validation. This mirrors the rites of passage of every young man must undergo. The separation from paternal authority to establish his own masculine sovereignty, or his own paternal sovereignty, right? By the end, Miles honors his father by not obeying him, but embodying the very principles his fathers lived by in his own way. Oh, let me read that properly. By the end, Miles honors his father not by obeying him, but by embodying the very principles his father lived by in his own way. The real masculine arc of Miles Morales is not about racial representation. It's about becoming the author of your own power, which is what Black men need. Black men need to become the author of his own story instead of letting his fucking woman, society, and dumbass Black culture author his story for him. He goes from, I hope I'm good enough, to, I know who I am, and I will carry this in my way. That's the journey from performative to sovereign masculinity, and it's universal. The framework from external performance to internal sovereignty, which I expounded on what I originally said in the beginning of the video, with the previous presentation. Performative masculinity is as a training ground. Performative masculinity isn't inherently bad. It's a necessary first stage in a man's development. It's how boys learn structure, imitation, and external discipline. You watch your father, your coach, your mentor, your heroes. You copy how they walk, talk, handle pressure. That's external performance, but the key is you perform to learn the form, not to become the form. In other words, Bruce Lee said, I forgot what Bruce Lee says. He says, I forgot what he says, but it echoes similar to what Bruce Lee says, right? You perform to learn the form, not to become the form. In other words, you learn MMA, you learn the structure of MMA, but you don't become the structure of MMA. You become your own form. You become your own form, your own. In other words, if I go learn the structure of the peekaboo style, and I go learn wrestling, and I'm picking up the traits to develop those things to become my own unique expression of those. Right. Miles Morales had to watch Peter Parker, had to mimic Spider-Man for a while, because that gave him a model. Every man needs a model before he can build his own system. This is the stage is about exposure, learning what manhood looks like in the world. The trap of performative masculinity. The danger comes when a man never graduates from performance to sovereignty. He becomes a slave to outside approval, trying to prove he's a man through status, woman, clothes, and validation, living by imitation, not conviction, fearing judgment more than he fears being untrue to himself. That's when performative masculinity becomes a mask. with no soul behind it. Miles' early struggles represents this. He's trying to act like Spider-Man, but doesn't yet believe in himself. His power glitches because his energy isn't aligned with his identity. The birth of sovereign masculinity. Sovereign masculinity emerges when a man turns inward, when he stops asking, what do others expect? And starts asking, what does my spirit demand of me? I'm going to say that again. I almost cried right there too. Man, I'll make myself cry with my own words. Because what I put down here is to bring men back to your primal spirit. When I say primal spirit, I don't mean a destructive version of it. I mean a balanced version of it, where you're free and sovereign to yourself, but at the same time, not destructive to others. But you're primal, right? It brings you back to your rawest expression, but controlled and structured. When he stops asking, what do others expect? And starts asking, what does my spirit demand of me? Or, as the Rasta would say, what I spirit demand of I? This is when a man begins to define his code, move from conviction to compression, take responsibility for his direction, not waiting for approval. Miles painting his own suit and stepping into his role symbolizes this perfectly. That moment wasn't rebellion, it was rebirth. He absorbed everything from the external world, mentorship, law, structure, and transformed it into inner law. His own masculine cult, his own creed. Without that, we as men, we just become the androids and robots that society over the past couple of decades have tried to break us into being. Here's the practical takeaway for my audience, right? Observe other men. Learn from strong examples without worshiping them. Imitate to understand, but don't cling to the imitation once it served its purpose. Test what works for your nature, your spirit, and your mission. Refine it into a personal code, something that governs your action, even when no one is watching. This is how you build your sovereign cult, not in the sense of a group, but as an internal order, governed by discipline, spirit, and truth. The external world trains your reflexes. The internal world trains your soul. A complete man learns to master both. This is my speech that I wrote because I was frustrated after that, and I didn't want to explode on that panel because me exploding. They respect Tommy when he's exploding and don't call him emotional. But if any other man does it, it's called them being emotional. We say we want better representation of Black masculinity, structure, leadership, balance, family, patriarchy, a nuclear family. But when Miles Morales, a movie, finally shows up, we clowned it. That's the nigga Spider-Man with a Mexican mother, and he gonna go up and rob somebody, Brian? Miles Morales had a Black father, a cop, an authority figure, a protector, a Puerto Rican mother, a nurturer, a nurse, the warmth of the home. That's literally the balance we talk about when we say we want our communities to get back to family, to structure, to foundation. But instead, seeing that people, even Black men on the so-called right, conservative, Republican, whatever the fuck you want to call yourself, reduce them to a stereotype. They said, oh, he's going to go up and rob a car or rob or the lowrider. And even was it a joke, it's not a joke to me. I don't think that was a joke. I think that was projection, in my opinion. That's the same poison that white racists use. The same language, just recycled through a different political uniform. And I'm sorry, I cannot sit stoic and contain emotions and sit idly by while Black people contradict themselves, whether you're left or right. And yet, but Brian, Tommy, and the rest of that panel, y'all contradicted yourself because the whole panel, you was talking about fatherhood and the importance of father. And you had a motherfucking movie that represented that. And you mocked it. It's wild because you hear people say, on the right say, especially from Charlie Kirk, black people need fathers. They need structure. Cool. Here's Miles Morales, a structured home, a father in the house, mother working, both parents loving. And what do you do with that image? You fucking mocked it. Your blood clot mocked it. So what are we really saying we want? From the right, from the black men from the right, and the black men from the left, and the black men all over the place. What the fuck do you want? If every time you see the standard or the image of what to say, what the fuck you say you want to see in black culture, you didn't mock it. Cap was correct. Yeah, joke about shit too much. This is not a joke. Shout out to Captain Zarya. This is not a game. At least I don't take it as a game. I don't take this shit as a joke. Every time we see the standard of what we say we want, we mock it. Because when the image of stability finally shows up in color, people still see dysfunction because that's what they expect to see from us. That's not left or right. That's mental programming. It's not even about politics anymore. It's about how much of your mind belongs to your own compass versus how much of it belongs to your political tribe. This is why I don't do groups. I don't do any of that. I could be in the social hierarchy. I could speak about the topics. As the 48 Laws of Power say, speak like them, but think how you like. But at the same time, I'm going to think like I like. I'm going to still have my own compass, my own sovereign masculinity and my identity. And if I hear or see something wrong, I'm going to speak to it. I don't care what tribe I belong into. I don't care if I'm a Caribbean black or I'm a Black American. If y'all saying something goofy or you're contradicting yourself, I'm going to speak up on it. So I don't do groups. Because when you're doing a group, you have to give your identity up to a group that may not align with who you are. And that group doesn't allow you to have your own internal thoughts process. That's why I never joined gangs. I don't move left or right. I'm moving true. I can learn from both sides, but I don't worship either. Because once you let a group think for you, you stop thinking. And when you stop thinking, you stop being sovereign. That's the whole idea about the Constitution and America breaking away, the founding fathers of America breaking away from Great Britain, break away from Marxism or the monarchy, where everybody's thinking for you and you can't think for yourself. That's how America was founded, or structured the way it was structured. You can be conservative and still have your own mind. You can be a liberal and still have your own discernment. But what you can't do is keep copying the language, the stereotypes, the rhythm of people who never lived your experience. They claim to represent your people. That's what disappointed me on that panel, because those brothers didn't realize Miles Morales is exactly what they say they want. A young black man, because he is a young black man, because he comes from a black man's sperm. That Puerto Rican mother is part of his dynasty. He's up under his patriarchal rule, up under his authority, up under his household. That's how patriarchy works. If I fuck a white bitch, she's absorbed into my nation. And whatever kids she produces comes from my nutsacks. And she danced to my tune. The masculine principle is that I'm the fire starter, the spark, the initiator, the one that moved the shit. She just multiplies it by following my framework. That's the principle. In other words, a bitch don't move unless I move her. She's under my control and command. So if I fuck a white bitch or Becky, she's under my patriarchal rule. Patriarchy is the etymology of the rule of the father. She's under my reign. Part of my reign. Those kids we produce come from me. She's in a black man's house. And everything she produces, I tell her to produce it. And it's therefore black or Jamaican black or whatever you want to say. A young black man raised in order, love, and balance will find his own identity through the structure his father gave him and the compassion his mother taught him. That's not weakness, that's foundation, that's legacy. That's what we've been asking for. And it's right there on the screen. Miles Morales, the symbolic fusion of masculine law and feminine spirit. So this is like when God in the beginning of the Bible took some clay and he blew the spirit of breath into it. The dirt is the masculine structure of God, of the Almighty Father. The breath is the feminine spirit. The law gives the feminine structure. Right? So this is what it means. The father, Jefferson Davis, the symbolic of law, order, and logical interpretation. So that's my new word, right? Logical interpretation, that's my term. Jefferson Davis represents the masculine archetype of structure, discipline, and moral duty. As a Black American police officer from East New York, Brooklyn, he embodies the man who works within a system, often one that doesn't fully value him. To protect his community, his family, and his code, his form of masculinity is rooted in responsibility and clarity. He believes the world makes sense when rules are respected, boundaries are honored, and action is guided by logic. This connects directly to the masculine skill of logical interpretation. Logical interpretation is the man's internal tool for decoding the world's ambiguity. It's how he translates confusion, emotional fog, or manipulation into concrete, observable information. A man operating from logical interpretation doesn't react. He analyzes. He observes the facts, patterns, and motives behind the surface, building a clear picture from uncertain data. This keeps him grounded in reason even when the world around him is chaotic or deceptive. For Miles, his father's ways of teaching through structure, law, and truth imparted that a man must use logic to demystify confusion in a world full of villains, illusions, and ideological traps. Jefferson's influence gave Miles the foundation to stand firm in clarity. His father's lessons were not only about obedience to rules, but understanding why those rules exist and when they serve the truth versus when they suppress it. Thus, Jefferson symbolizes the external masculine principle, the force that guards, defines, protects the reason, clarity, and order. Let's go into his mother. The mother, Rio Morales, the symbol of emotion, nature, and emotional intelligence. Rio Morales, a Puerto Rican nurse, embodies the nurturing, intuitive, and emotional intelligence that balances her husband's logic. Where Jefferson represents structure, Rio represents flow. She raises Miles with warmth, care, and deep emotional awareness that grounds his humanity. Her nurturing isn't passive, it's spiritual collaboration. She helps Miles understand not only what he feels, but why he feels it. This is the essence of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness recognizes one's own emotions and their influence. Self-regulation, controlling impulses and maintaining composure under pressure. Social awareness, reading others accurately, empathizing without losing self, right? Because the misconception or the misuse of emotional intelligence is women trying to get men to lose his masculine structure or logic and reasoning to empathize with her emotional bullshit, which was not the original intent of emotional intelligence by its definition, its original definition. Reading others accurately, emphasizing without losing self. Relationship management, communicating with sensitivity, resolving conflict through understanding. Rio's presence in Miles' life symbolizes that strength without compassion becomes rigidity, and emotion without discipline becomes chaos. She teaches Miles that power must be guided by empathy, that leadership involves not only asserting truth, but understanding people. Her energy represents nature, spirit, and community, a reflection of the emotional rhythm of East New York and the broader Afro-Latino culture identity that shaped him, right? Where Jefferson gives Miles the logic to interpret the world, Rio gives him the emotional literacy to feel it without being swallowed by it. Right? So that's an important of the mother the father's structure and law and authority, and then the mother's emotional balance and her, emotional intelligence. That's the balance, right? These are two competing forces, not competing against each other, but competing for each other. And they're competing to raise a child into being a productive individual, right? Whether it be male or female. The fusion, but see, it's more important to raise a boy. It's important to raise a woman, but it's important to raise a boy because that boy can become a superhero like Miles, right? The men are your future leaders, your future construction workers, your future firefighters, your future police officers, the future authority and structure of a society. If you're not raising them to be balanced and structured, you're not going to have a society. You're not going to have a society that moves and innovates. Miles Morales becomes the fusion of both worlds, the law and logic of his father and the emotional intelligence and spirit of his mother. His journey isn't about rejecting one or the other, but transcending both through synthesis. In his father's order, he learns structure in his mother's compassion. He learns connection. When these merge, Miles discovers sovereign masculinity, a self-defined power that no system, ideology, or emotional manipulation can control. This fusion gives birth to the archetype of the sovereign man. He sees clearly through the logical interpretation. He feels deeply through emotional intelligence, and he acts decisively through internal alignment. Miles' evolution mirrors the path of every man navigating the modern world, learning from external teachings of society, parents, and tradition, but eventually claiming authorship over his own identity. He becomes a new type of masculine force, one that respects order without being enslaved by it, and one that feels emotion without being ruled by it. That's why Miles Morales isn't merely a black Superman, Spider-Man. He's a symbolic rite of passage that every black man needs to see. A coming-of-age story for men, learning to balance the logic of the father and the emotions of the mother, forming an internal world that answers to neither ideology nor chaos, but to truth. We're going to break it down by points now, right? Core lesson: respects rules and boundaries, understands cause and effect in the world, accountability is central to identity and action, logical interpretation, the masculine superpower that I call it, right? This is my term, built by me. Translating ambiguity, manipulation, and emotional vagueness into observable, actionable information. Seeing whether information aligns with reality or internal compass, and decoding deception, evaluating risk, and making rational decisions. A man's tool for navigating the world strategically, including social relationships and vetting character, right? Purpose in Miles' growth provides clarity and structure, trains Miles to operate from observation, reason, and alignment, then react blindly. Archetype, internal feminine principle, nurturing emotional literacy and the cultural grounding. Background, Puerto Rican nurse providing care, work, and cultural continuity. Core lesson, encourages self-expression, creativity, and connection. Teaches pride in the heritage and community. Provides emotional grounding and stability. Emotional intelligence, masculine superpower. Self-awareness, recognizing and understanding one's own emotion. Self-regulation, controlling impulses, and maintaining judgment under pressure. Social awareness, reading and understanding others' emotions accurately. Relationship management, communicating effectively and resolving conflicts strategically. Purpose in Miles' growth. Balance as far as logic with empathy and intuition. Ensures emotional intelligence guides action, preventing rigidity and destructive impulses. So it needs to be a combination of them both, right? By the way, women, y'all don't have emotional intelligence. Y'all lack that. Archetype, synthesis of father's logic and mother's emotional intelligence. Key transformation. Moves from performing identity to embodying purpose. Internalizes lessons from both parents and translate them into self-defined path. Masculine superpower combined. Logical interpretation navigates ambiguity, deception, and risk with clarity. Emotional intelligence connects to self and others. Reads social cues and manages interactions strategically. Outcome, becomes a sovereign man, making decisions aligned with his own internal compass. able to act decisively with reason and empathy in a complex, ambiguous world, represents the ideal balance of masculine structure and feminine intuition, forming a personal legacy. Symbolic meaning, not just a hero, but a blueprint for modern masculinity, demonstrates how external lessons, structure, and nurture can merge into a unique internal authority and identity. Key points. Key points that black men on the left and the right miss. The left tends to weaponize representation for ideology, wokeism, Marxism. The right often mocks or diminishes traditional black family structure instead of acknowledging the value. Both sides only see the surface and repeat talking points that aren't their own. The nuclear family in Miles Morales. Father Jefferson Davis represents structure, law, logical interpretation, teaching Miles to read the world objectively, decode ambiguity, and make rational decisions. Mother Rio Morales represents emotional intelligence, nurturing, and spirit, teaching Miles to understand himself and others, regulate emotions, and communicate effectively. Together, they provide a foundation for a young man to grow with balance, not ideology. Miles Morales as sovereign identity. Miles never replaced Peter Parker. He became his own Spider-Man. He fused what he learned from his parents into a unique self-defined path. His power isn't just superhuman ability, it's a combination of logic and emotional intelligence applied in the real world. Lessons missed by most people. It's not about wokeism, political allegiances, or racial replacement narratives. The real takeaway is a young black man can learn from both masculine and feminine guidance, synthesize it, and step into sovereignty. That's a blueprint for life, leadership, and legacy. It's what's invisible to ideologies on both sides. Right. I think this is just the same thing. This is just like a local thing on the Mac. Yeah, I'm not going to put that up there. But yeah, that was my breakdown of the panel of Tommy Sotomayor that I was on. And I hope Tommy sees it. I hope the people on the panel see it. We cannot, moving forward, we cannot keep, you black men on the right, you cannot keep falling for, you can't keep doing what the white people on the right do. Every time we see a standard that they keep asking for, they gloss over it or they ignore it or they mock it. Or try to attach or project something on it that the thing they're projecting on doesn't represent. And a lot of you black men on the right, Brian, Tommy, y'all fall into the same trap. So we got to moving forward. I try not to fall into that same trap. That's why I'm neither right nor left. I'm neither right nor left. I'm for what's the facts, right? Even in the arguments in these spaces, I'm neither side of it's always the man's fault or it's always the woman's fault, right? I put a lot more blame on the women simply because they've been given the carte blanche to do what the fuck they want. And they're not being responsible for their actions as opposed to men where we're responsible for everything we do. Right. So yeah, this is Kiss Yardy Gamer Nation. Like, share, and subscribe. And please, I know everybody's attention span is short because of COVID, but I really appreciate it if you would watch the video, learn from the game I spit, share the video, like the video. You know, if you see something that I've said that you want to use, give me credit, or have me come on your panel so I can break it down for you. I'll break it down for you. Right. Anyway, this is Kiss Yardy Nation Gaming. Like, share, and subscribe. Come on.